Welcome to Facing the Canon. My guest on the programme is Sarah Clay, CEO of Voices of Hope. Sarah, welcome to Facing the Canon.
Thank you ever so much. It's good to be here.
You're a very fascinating person, and I'm so glad we can have this conversation and just introduce you to some new people. Now, where were you born and where were you brought up?
So I'm a northern girl. I was born in Macclesfield, just south of Manchester, and spent my childhood there before moving down to Cambridge for uni. So,
and you're a pastor's kid. And am I right?
Yeah.
You're one of 7 children.
I am, yeah. And I now have 14 nieces and nephews.
Oh, wow. So what was life like for you growing up?
Oh, it was a complete mixed bag, actually. I love church. I think that's one of the things for me, that I've grown up with a huge passion for local church. And genuinely, it feels like family to me. And I'm very grateful for parents that modelled, church as family. And I'm from a big family. So that was a real amazing thing to grow up with. And incredibly, all my siblings follow Jesus. We all love Jesus. And I think that's, just a testimony of my childhood, really.
Yes.
It's the biggest thing for me. I didn't have in some ways, the easiest of childhoods growing up, but there's a lot of insecurity for me. Went through abuse as a young child. So it was definitely a mixed bag, but came out from it with a real passion for Jesus.
And Sarah, so how did you cope with the trauma of abuse as a young child?
I didn't really.
Yes.
So I think sometimes for people, when abuse happens quite young, you're very good at blocking it or dissociating from it. And that was definitely my coping mechanism, was just completely, trying to get on with life and ignore it in its entirety. So that was my coping mechanism.
That was, yes.
When I was a child, which did catch up with me later on, I'm not going to lie.
No.
And I think for me, it gave me a lot of underlying insecurity as well. And a real conflict between going, I know as a Christian, you're meant to be secure in Jesus and in your self-image in him and who he believes you to be, and could never seem to attain that in my heart, and always felt a divide there. So, I didn't deal with it as a child, in all honesty.
You went on to Cambridge University. That's where you studied music. How was life in Cambridge for you?
Oh, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I did way too much. So I did huge amounts of sport and music and church, and I was on so many collegiate teams. It was quite hilarious. And I think I worked more in my holidays than I did actually during the term time, because I just had a blast. So yes. It was really good experience for me.
For you.
Yeah, I loved it.
Now, just out of curiosity, Sarah, because my wife grew up in Cambridge, which church did you go to?
I went to Cambridge Community Church, C3.
I know it, yes. Oh,
they're
great.
A fantastic church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've preached there, actually. Yeah, I know it.
Ah.
Now, you got diagnosed with a particular condition with your stomach. What was that?
It's quite a rare thing. So it's called neuropathic gastroparesis. So neuropathic, so it's caused by neuropathy, so nerve damage to my stomach, and stomach, paresis, paralysis. So it's where your stomach just stops working and won't process food. So the consequence of that is, no matter what you try and eat and digest, it's like a plug in a bath. The food won't actually go down because there's no peristalsis movement. So
you're constantly like malnourished.
Well, I go through periods of it, yes. So when it's badly flaring up, I literally can't get any nutrition in. I lose a lot of weight. I end up having to be tube fed sometimes, where they pass a tube through your stomach into your small bowel. So then you ignore your stomach and you can still get nutrition in that way. So most years of my adult life, I been in hospital, and quite a lot of them have been on tube feeding. So
now, of course, I know that you know and believe that the Lord heals today, and as yet hasn't quite healed your stomach. How do you cope as a Christian with a condition that's quite chronic?
probably in varying ways, if I'm honest. There's a mixture of, at times I haven't coped well with it at all. And sometimes it is, I think, when your nutrition and your energy levels are really low, keeping your mind strong and focused on God is hard, really hard, in comparison to when you have your body's working as it should. But I think for me, I hit a point probably about, I don't know, halfway through the last 20 or 23 years or so, where I had to make a decision as to whether healing was going to be, to be honest, to be an idol in my life. You know, was it more important than who I believed God to be, and my trust in him? Because I found that the real wrestle was, do I believe that God is good? And do I believe that he's good for me? Can I trust his goodness towards me, even when I'm not seeing it in the natural, over a long period of time, in an issue that has had a massive impact on my life? You know, I've lost jobs over it. Probably have lost relationships because I haven't managed to sustain anything. And, you know, there's that sort of, can I really trust God that you love me and that you're good? And I'm really grateful that God's brought me through that, and I do. But that was a big wrestle for me. And there's been times, I think, the other battleground for me has been just actually wanting to give up at times, and just being, you know, I can't cope with this treatment anymore, or the multiple endoscopies and what feels like sometimes quite traumatic procedures that your body goes through. And just, there have been, you know, several times I've been like, not where I've wanted to end my life, but definitely like, God, I can't cope with carrying on. I don't want to. Like, can I just go up to heaven now? Thank you. And I think what's held me during those times has been the love of people around me and the faith of other people around me, who haven't demanded that I just trust Jesus for healing, but have actually gone, don't worry, we'll stand in faith for you. We believe that God can bring you through this. And that's so powerful. And I think just learning to actually just abide in the fact that God is the one who fights the battles for you, and not trying to fight it all yourself. And I discovered that fighting yourself only means that you lose generally. So I think there's been a bit of surrender on my part, and also the love and warmth and faith of people around me.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Sarah. Yeah, surrender and trust, and trusting in the providence of God, that actually God knows. But what's so remarkable and very encouraging, Sarah, is that despite your health struggles, you're like a pioneer entrepreneur in ministry. I mean, it was so joyful just reading and researching you yesterday. So, Voices of Hope, you're the CEO. Tell us, what is Voices of Hope?
Oh, it's the joy of my life at the moment. Is what it is. I'm so grateful to God for the work that I get to put my hands to, and it's a charity that I founded in 2019, and I think it came off the back of having walked through some very dark moments and seasons, and as I said, the faith of people and the love and the compassion of people around me is what brought me through those, when I'd run out of my own faith, and I definitely had run out of compassion or any hope. And I just, how valuable it is to be a source or a voice of hope in the lives of other people. And I am so blessed to have an incredible family. You know, I never feared that I wouldn't have a family around me, never. And, you know, when I didn't have a home, I probably could have gone to one of 5 houses in my family, and they would have welcomed me with loving arms, and they financially gave towards me. And so I have had this wraparound love and warmth of my family, but that just made me so acutely aware of people that don't, and how difficult that is.
Yes. And it is wonderful how, that's been part of the church community, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It really is.
So Voices of
Hope. The church is so powerful in that.
Totally. Voices of Hope. What is the main thing that Voices of Hope does?
So it supports women and children facing hardship. That's the arrowhead of what it does. It has a little bit of a wider impact, but really seeking to walk alongside women and children that are facing, whether that's life circumstance hardship, financial hardship, whether they've got long-term physical, mental health issues. And a big strand of what we do is women who've been through some form of abuse, whether that be domestic violence, childhood abuse, an attack. So we've got quite a specialism in that area of supporting women, and we do that very much in a partnership way with local organisations, churches, local authorities. And with our children, it's really supporting their needs, whether that be food insecurity, they're struggling with anxiety, so it's quite broad in its outworking, because people are very complex, as we all know. But women and children, and we work primarily across 3 boroughs: Kingston, Richmond and Elmbridge, but some of our projects are a lot wider than that. So we work with churches and local organisations.
Sarah, you're very creative. What you did and what you're doing with choirs. Tell us, obviously you're a music graduate, but tell us, how did the choirs begin, and tell us some of the work you've done with choirs.
Yeah, so I am a music graduate. So that's how the charity began, of course. It was with bringing people together who are vulnerable and isolated to do something that they love to do, whether they were good at it or not. And, there are definitely varying degrees of ability in our choirs. So we have all sorts of choirs. We have 3 choirs for women. So they're called our sisterhood choirs, and they are in our 3 different boroughs. We work into care home spaces. So really using singing as a way to give older people support in their physical and mental health, and also that sense of achievement that they have still got something to bring and give and build those healthy relationships. So we do that in those, and dementia centres. We have different types of community choirs. So one of the things we do for our women is we create a pathway from maybe they've come in to use some of the session services, and then we train them up and help employ them into those spaces as well. So it's a really lovely progression for some people. And then we've ended up doing all sorts of things with our choirs, ranging from singing with Ollie Murs.
Yes,
that was an experience. Yeah, that was an experience which I missed because I was in hospital.
Oh,
that was gutted. And then we linked it with the Trussell Trust at Southwark Cathedral. That was a big one that we did. But some of our favourites, to be honest, are when we do local events out in the community. We join with local churches at Christmas time. So it's quite varied what we do with them, but are
you able, Sarah, to tell us about 1 or 2 of the types of people that have joined a choir that have found it's been more than therapeutic for them?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got one lady. We're actually bringing her video out soon. It's a really powerful story. She went through, really, really horrific childhood abuse, and then ended up in a domestic violence relationship. And she actually sustained brain damage, a low level of brain damage, because of the domestic violence that she went through. And she joined us quite early on, and she'd always been told, and she laughs when she says it, but it's so desperately sad, that she was always told that she sang like a cat. And so she would never sing in public. She had very few friends. She'd never even had a birthday party. and you know, one of the things we did when we found that out is throw her a massive birthday party. But she joined the choirs really quite apprehensive about, I can't sing, I'm rubbish at singing, I don't even know what to do, and I don't know how to follow the words because of the cognitive problems that she experienced. And she's just gone from strength to strength. She absolutely loves the choirs now. She has gained, I think, so much self-confidence and friendship, relationship, trust, that she is, as I said, she's telling her story publicly in an event that we're holding, and we're videoing that, and that's kind of the journey she's been on, and she supports so many other people as well. And I could tell you story after story, like that gorgeous lady, and there's one other, and she's an absolute star. She came early on, and again, she'd been through the same childhood abuse and domestic violence, and she just had really struggled. She's a Christian, and she'd really struggled to make sense of why God had allowed her life to be so derailed, if I can put it that way.
Yes.
And that's a really hard thing when you face prolonged abuse, and it's repeated throughout your lifetime, of kind of like, well, what am I meant to do with my life? What is the purpose of my life? Like, God, you know, why was I created? Surely it wasn't just to be abused. And she's now come through to the point of where, again, she's telling her story. She did that a couple of years ago in front of 300 people. She now advocates at council forums and in live events around the issue of domestic violence and the importance of supporting survivors. She said to me, this was sometime last year, she's like, I feel like, and she's in her 70s, okay, so this gives you an idea of how long her journey's been. And she said to me that she's so just so encouraged that she finally feels like she has purpose from the pain that she's been through, so that she can actually be a source of hope and inspiration to other women, that she can come alongside them, which she does incredibly. And she, you know, she acts as a peer mentor to other women, as well as speaking and advocating around this issue. And that, for me, you can't get better.
Of course. But how many choirs have you actually set up?
Oh, I don't know.
No, it would be in the region of
about 15.
About 15 choirs.
Yeah.
And you've basically facilitated the opportunity to give both women of faith and no faith, and many of them very broken and very bruised. Yeah. You know, not just therapy, but community and confidence, and helping them in their journey of faith. And that is wonderful, Sarah. You're a very intriguing person. As I was reading about you, I was like, you've got this quiver, and in the quiver, you've got all these different arrows. I mean, choirs is just one thing. Tell us about the BRITE Box. What is that?
Okay, so that came out of the pandemic, and basically BRITE Box, spelled BRITE, building resilience in today's environment. We invite children, families onto a 1-year really fun cookery program, would be a lovely way to describe it. But we provide that for free, and we target it at children as the ones who, all the branding and everything is specifically for children to cook a healthy meal for their family. And so they join the project, and we work that through, I don't know, something like 25 different schools in 8-9 different areas at the moment in the UK. And each week this child gets to take home a box with all the ingredients, a recipe card, and they get to take it home, and they cook a meal that is healthy, replicable, on a budget. So, and our real hope in this is that we engage the whole family and that child in healthy eating habits, that's why we advocate for a year, so that it's not just a food handout, but it's
Sure.
really actually teaching sustainable, healthy habits. And we've evaluated it for 5 years, and we know that it's having a really great impact. So
Amazing.
that's
And
BRITE Box.
right, come on.
Yeah.
How many boxes have you distributed?
And do you know what? I'm so glad you asked me this.
Go on.
Only because last week we actually did the numbers, because we were trying to put a grant application in, and we have just hit over 100,000 BRITE boxes.
That's incredible.
So, great timing.
Great. 100. So Sarah, did you wake up one morning or in your quiet time, what you just had this God idea of, because obviously your music, that's a big strength and a gift and an ability you've got, but now we're into food. How did that happen?
Do you know what? It's a beautiful question, because God was firmly in the middle of it, because I never thought I would end up doing anything like BRITE Box. Like, just I've never even, when it says God can do far more than you ask or imagine.
Yes.
I definitely had never even thought about this. And I was in a council meeting when everyone was looking at how do we repurpose for the hit of the pandemic. So it just, it was in March 2020. And I felt so convicted that they were raising this issue of food insecurity for people. And I felt so convicted around this issue that I raised my hand, and I was just like, we have people, or I said, I have people right now that, if we don't sort this issue of food insecurity, are really going to struggle throughout this what we didn't even know what it was at that point. It wasn't a pandemic, it was a something, a COVID. And I think I mention that because I think God shifted something in my heart quite fundamentally from, I'd grown up in church. I really had a heart for local church and for people coming into church and for caring well, being compassionate. But I didn't necessarily see the needs around in society as something that I was called to impact, in all honesty. And something changed for me that day, I would say, that challenge from God. Will I see these people around in my community as my people? Will I, as God's people, will I take responsibility for the needs around me? And we often go like, Lord, give me the nations, I pray for this nation. And I often feel like the Holy Spirit would say, do you actually want a people? Do you really want to carry the responsibility of the needs of the people? And that was actually the beginning of stepping into the space of food insecurity during COVID. And that's where BRITE Box came out of, because we were hearing of families really, really struggling with managing to eat enough. Kids were bored, and just had the idea of BRITE Box.
But do you know what's intriguing there, Sarah, is that you have frequently been malnourished in your own life. But God has used that to nourish others.
It's hilarious, isn't it?
Isn't it? Now, another...
I know, I love the irony.
It is, isn't it? So another arrow in your quiver is ABC. Tell us what ABC is.
So the active breathing course, I wrote that, but I ended up in hospital for 3 weeks with COVID in 2021. And then, am
I right, Sarah, that when you got COVID, you also got pneumonia and was it pleurisy? So you were very sick.
Yeah, not as sick as some, but I was sick enough to be in hospital for 3.5 weeks because I have asthma. And what I actually found hardest about that, because hospital wasn't a new thing for me, in all honesty. So it wasn't that, it was the fact that I literally watched people die around me of the same condition. And I watched people come in who had been previously, because you get to know people's stories, they'd never even really been in hospital, completely fit and healthy, and being discharged with oxygen cylinders, and their life fundamentally changed for, we didn't know how long, because we didn't know what the outcomes of COVID would be at that point. And it really was hard to kind of get my head around watching people die and watching people's lives just almost change overnight. And I spoke to my sister, she's a consultant pediatrician up in Cambridge, and I was just like, oh, this. I just was explaining how difficult it'd been, and she suggested, she's like, well, you could always look at how you could use your singing and breathing techniques, which we've done a lot with older people and people with long-term health conditions through the choirs. What about doing something from that and supporting? I don't think she meant write a course, but then whilst I recovered from COVID, I sat and wrote the active breathing course, then worked with local NHS partners and our local council physios and all that kind of stuff. And that's how the active breathing course came about.
Yeah.
And we're just launching it for children soon, which is exciting.
And many people have participated in the course.
Yes. Yeah. From all over the UK, because it's online.
It's online. It's hugely,
yeah, that's really helpful.
That's hugely encouraging. I mean, it's just amazing how, you know, what's a good idea, what's a God idea, and then you stumble on a good God idea and help people throughout the whole nation. So you must be encouraged.
Yeah. I am, but yes, I am. It's more I enjoy it than I sit hugely encouraged. I think I really love watching God just do incredible things. I've been blown away by the last few years, in all honesty. Like, I'm amazed at what God has done, and so thankful for the way he's provided in that. Because we went overnight from, like, the first year as a charity, our books were, our income was about 27,000, I think it is.
Yes.
The following year, it was 220,000.
Yes.
Like, we just grew exponentially, and God has continued to provide one way or another. It's been a bit hairy at times, but he has, and he's brought I have an incredible staff team.
Yeah.
And just connections around, and he's blown wind into things far more than I would ever be able to achieve.
But Sarah, the Lord uses people, and he uses people's availability. And here I am, Lord, use me. And you're a real testament and testimony to that. Sarah, it's wonderful what you've done. It's wonderful just to hear your positive attitude despite struggles with your health, and just to say, keep on keeping on. It's been a joy to have you on Facing the Canon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Well, wasn't she inspiring? I feel truly inspired and just encouraged. Really get an idea. Well, it could be a God idea. Well, go with it and see what happens. Thank you for joining us on Facing the Canon. Please join us again.